I once told an English historian that the internet was America's gift to humanity, and he looked at me as if I'd claimed the British invented sunshine. There was a long, silent pause, filled only by the gentle clinking of teacups in his Oxford study. He didn't scoff or correct me immediately. He simply leaned back, steepled his fingers, and asked, in a tone of genuine academic curiosity, "Now, why would you think that?" That question, delivered not as a challenge, but as an invitation to introspection, was more disarming than any factual rebuttal could ever be. It was the beginning of my education. That single moment revealed a startling, universal truth about the American psyche. We don't actively fabricate history. We perform a kind of national interior design, furnishing the past with stars and stripes until the narrative feels like home. This isn't merely about historical inaccuracy or a flawed education, though those play a part. It's about a profound, collective audacity to reshape global reality until it comfortably fits our national self-image. We are a nation of storytellers, and in our story, we are always the protagonist arriving in the third act. When Americans travel, we carry more than luggage and guidebooks. We bring an entire rewritten epic where we are the undisputed lead. I first saw this in its pure, unvarnished form in a cozy, wood-paneled Cambridge pub, the air thick with the scent of ale and old books. I watched a man from Chicago, full of Midwestern charm, hold court with a group of fascinated locals. He was explaining, with great conviction, how Thomas Edison, that great American pioneer, had single-handedly vanquished the darkness and given electric light to the world. An elderly professor sipping his bitter nearby smiled a gentle, crinkly-eyed smile. "Swan, actually," he interjected, his voice soft but clear. Joseph Wilson Swan demonstrated his incandescent bulb right here in England, a full year before Edison's patent. He even lit his own home with it. The American's confident expression didn't collapse. It merely flickered, like a bulb with a loose connection. His brow furrowed in genuine confusion. So, Edison. He improved it then. He ventured. The professor's eyes twinkled with a light that seemed centuries old. We prefer to think he commercialized the inspiration. He saw its potential and, with characteristic American vigor, made it a household object. A different kind of genius, to be sure. This reframing, this gentle pivoting from inventor to popularizer, is a recurring theme. It's a pattern one began to see everywhere, a cultural script we unconsciously follow. At the hallowed halls of London's Science Museum, I witnessed a woman from Texas, draped in the bold colors of her home state, point authoritatively at a majestic steam engine display. "See, honey," she told her wide-eyed daughter. American industrial power and ingenuity changed the entire world. We reshaped the globe with this kind of innovation. A curator, a quiet man with a kind face, happened to be passing by. He paused, sensing a teachable moment. "That's Stephenson's rocket, ma'am," he said respectfully. "Birthed in Newcastle upon Tyne in 1829. A truly revolutionary machine for its time." The woman from Texas squinted, not in defiance, but in genuine cognitive dissonance. "But we perfected the concept, right? We made it truly powerful and efficient." Her daughter, smartphone in hand, tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Mom, the sign right here says British Innovation." The woman frowned, a deep line forming between her brows. "That's not what my textbook showed," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. The curator offered a patient, almost pitying smile, the kind one reserves for those who are just discovering that the fundamental laws they took for granted, like gravity, might be optional in other parts of the universe. We don't inherit history. We acquire it like real estate. It's a transaction. We see a good idea, a foundational piece of human progress, and we put a bid on it, adding it to the sprawling portfolio of the American narrative. This instinct to claim and redefine extends to the very landscape. On the world's first iron bridge, arching gracefully over the rivers Severn in Shropshire, a cheerful couple from Ohio marveled at the industrial relic. "Wow, look at this," the husband announced to his wife and, by extension, to the other visitors nearby. "This is incredible. It really reminds me of Pittsburgh's steel heritage. You can see the inspiration clear as day." A British hiker, pausing to take a sip from his water bottle, let out a soft chuckle. "This bridge was forged and erected before Pittsburgh even had an official mayor mate," he said with a grin. The American from Ohio laughed, a good-natured sound. "A beautiful prototype, then," he declared, seamlessly incorporating this new information into his existing worldview. The Brit nodded, his smile widening. "A prototype for your history curriculum, perhaps. This pattern isn't rooted in ignorance, not truly. It's a product of a specific educational design. American history, as taught in many of our schools, is not a complex, interwoven tapestry. It is a blockbuster film. The early scenes featuring European philosophers, Asian inventors, and Middle Eastern scholars are the opening credits, quickly skimmed. We, the Americans, arrive in the third act with a stirring soundtrack to save the day, innovate the future, and deliver the closing monologue. We aren't told that Alexander Graham Bell was a Scot who emigrated. We're told he invented the telephone in America. The full, messy, collaborative, multinational story of human progress is a director's cut we simply never see. Our version is the theatrical release, streamlined for narrative punch and patriotic satisfaction. This cinematic worldview was on full display in York's magnificent National Railway Museum. A father from Boston, bursting with civic pride, stood before the grand gleaming locomotive known as the Flying Scotsman. "This," he declared to his family, his voice echoing in the vast hall, "this right here symbolizes American ambition and our drive to connect a continent." A volunteer guide, a retired railwayman with a gentle demeanor, approached softly. "That's the Flying Scotsman, sir," he corrected gently. "A triumph of British engineering. A symbol of our own age of steam and industry." The man from Boston waved a hand, effortlessly absorbing the correction without altering his core thesis. "Exactly. We took that pioneering spirit and made it global. We built the Transcontinental Railroad." His teenage son, immersed in the embarrassment that only teenagers can fully feel, sighed deeply. "Dad, we're literally in England, in a British railway museum." The father beamed, completely undeterred. "And yet," he said, placing a hand on the locomotive's warm metal, "somehow I feel like we built this." The confidence is breathtaking, a force of nature in itself. On a leisurely boat tour on the Thames, an American woman from Florida, squinting at a GPS unit on the boat's console, asked the guide, "So, when did you guys here in England start using American GPS technology? Was it a difficult transition from, the old ways?" The guide, a riverman born and bred, smiled a weathered smile. "We've been navigating this very river, ma'am, since the Romans were here. Since Tudor times, we've had pilots who knew every current and sandbank by heart." She nodded, processing this. "Right, of course. But America created the modern navigation tech that made it all precise and easy." The guide tilted his head, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Are you familiar with John Harrison's marine chronometer? Developed right here in London around 1761. Solved the problem of longitude at sea." She blinked, her face a polite blank. "Who?" The guide's grin was swift and sharp. "The man who ensured your cruise ship doesn't accidentally end up sailing into the coast of France," he replied. "We're rather fond of him. Confidence is our national currency. Context is their quiet, patient revenge. This cultural collision reaches its most concentrated form in everyday interactions. In a brightly lit London pharmacy, a young American, perhaps a student on her semester abroad, proclaimed to the pharmacist, 'You know, you have to admit, American science and drive really gave the world its greatest medical gifts. Things like penicillin.' The pharmacist, a woman of efficient movements, continued scanning her items. 'Penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming,' she stated without looking up. 'A Scot, working at St. Mary's Hospital, just a few miles from here.' The American student froze mid-reach for her lip balm. The information seemed to short-circuit her momentum. So what? What did we actually invent?" she asked, a note of genuine plaintiveness in her voice. The pharmacist handed over the paper bag containing her purchases and met her gaze directly for the first time. "Branding, mostly," she said, her face a perfect deadpan. "You are world-class at branding." Every culture possesses its own mental atlas, a cognitive map of the world and its hierarchies. Ours, the American map, is a Ptolemaic diagram of the cosmos. The United States is the brilliant, shining sun at the very center. Europe, Asia, the rest of the Americas, they are the planets, moons, and asteroids in our orbital system. We perceive global influence not as a shared, ancient heritage that we have recently joined, but as a series of imports that, at some point, passed through the vibrant, chaotic customs hall of JFK Airport before becoming part of the global lexicon. When we encounter people, polite, patient, and often amused people who gently remind us that this world was thinking, building, writing, and innovating for centuries before our nation was even a glimmer in a colonist's eye, it feels less like a simple correction and more like a subtle abdication. It is the unsettling feeling of being demoted from the star of the show to a member of the supporting cast. This dynamic plays out in academic and social settings with a predictable rhythm. In a cozy Edinburgh cafe, the air rich with the smell of roasted coffee and old stone, an American exchange student asserted to her Scottish flatmate, Alexander Graham Bell was American, obviously. "I mean, the telephone? It's a classic American invention." Her flatmate, stirring her latte, raised a single skeptical eyebrow. "Born right here in Edinburgh," she said calmly. "Educated here. Moved to Boston later in life, sure." The American student pondered this, her head tilted. "So Scotland counts?" she asked, as if discovering a new rule in a game she thought she knew. The Scot laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "We count everything, my dear, including your wonderfully creative interpretations of historical provenance. The British art of correction is a masterclass in psychological warfare fought with velvet gloves. It is rarely confrontation. It is curation. They possess a seemingly infinite capacity to allow us to talk ourselves into a beautifully decorated corner of our own making. They listen patiently as we lay out our confident but flawed assertions, and then, only when we have finished, do they quietly, calmly point to the small brass plaque on the wall that states the actual documented facts. That ensuing silence is not passive or awkward. It is precision itself. It is the space where our unearned confidence evaporates into the damp British air. They aren't angry or offended. They are like cultural anthropologists, patiently studying a fascinating tribe whose confidence has somehow become completely untethered from historical context. They are collecting data on what happens when belief outruns evidence, perhaps America's most significant and most misunderstood export is not our films, our music, or our technology, but this very confidence as a form of cultural capital. It is a commodity we produce in abundance and spend liberally all over the world. In the United Kingdom, facts still hold a kind of ancient, unassailable authority. They are the stone foundations of their buildings and their identity. In America, volume often holds power. The louder, more charismatic, more confidently delivered argument frequently wins the day, regardless of its factual underpinnings. This clash of values was perfectly illustrated at a sleek London tech networking event. A Silicon Valley founder, holding a glass of champagne aloft, toasted to American ingenuity and medical breakthroughs, to discoveries like penicillin that have saved millions of lives. A British doctor, standing nearby in a tweed jacket that seemed to defy the modern setting, offered a thin smile. Penicillin was discovered by Sir Alexander Fleming, he clarified softly, at his lab just down the road in Paddington. The entrepreneur from California didn't miss a beat. He was trained in pivots, but we mass-produced it. He recovered swiftly, his smile never wavering. We scaled it. We made it available to the world. The doctor nodded slowly, as if considering a complex specimen. Indeed you did, he replied. And we can mass-produce that particular clarification for you, if you'd like. It seems it may be in high demand. Being wrong isn't the real failure. Staying wrong proudly is the true cultural sin. My own moment of profound, humbling clarity came during an elegant dinner party in a Kensington townhouse. The room was filled with the soft glow of candlelight and the low murmur of intelligent conversation. Surrounded by historians, journalists, and academics, I found myself fueled by good wine and the desire to contribute, stating with conviction how America had essentially crafted the model for modern representative democracy. The table, which had been a lively hum of chatter, fell into a sudden profound silence. It was a silence that felt heavy, not with judgment, but with a vast, unspoken knowledge. A historian sitting directly opposite me, a man with kind eyes and a spine of steel, leaned forward slightly. "The Magna Carta," he said, his voice so soft it was almost a whisper, yet it carried across the table. "Signed in 1215, the English Civil War in the 1640s, the glorious Revolution of 1688, the development of parliamentary sovereignty over centuries. All of this was happening here, a long, slow, often bloody experimentation with the limits of power and the rights of the individual, long before your nation even existed as a concept. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. I attempted to laugh it off, to retreat into the familiar fortress of American exceptionalism. "Yeah, but we streamlined it," I said, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. "We took the concept and made it ... efficient." He smiled gently, a smile that contained multitudes. "And promptly monetized it," he added. The silence that followed this time wasn't awkward. It was illuminating. It was a light being shone directly onto my own blind spots. Here is the painful, beautiful, and ultimately liberating truth I learned from that evening and from countless other gentle corrections. Humility is not surrender. It is not an admission of defeat or a diminishment of national pride. It is, rather, an admission into a larger, richer, more complex conversation. It is the intellectual and emotional passport that transforms you from a loud, oblivious tourist into a genuine welcomed guest. It is the key that unlocks the real history, the one that was there all along. Weeks after that dinner party, my British friend, the historian, sent me an email. The subject line was, "For your further education." Attached was a PDF list, meticulously researched and annotated, titled, "Things Americans Didn't Invent But Have Mastered the Confidence For." It contained 50 entries. The telephone, television, the telegraph, the telescope, the train, the airplane. The Wright brothers were, of course, building on centuries of European aeronautical theory, the computer, the internet. It went on, a litany of our confident claims. At the very bottom of the list, she had added a final, handwritten note in the scanned document. Item 51, the peculiar skill of explaining our own inventions back to us, but with more enthusiasm and a better marketing budget. I texted her back immediately, falling back on our national talent for reframing. We call that enthusiastic cultural exchange, sharing the story. She replied almost instantly, her British pithiness a perfect counterpoint. We call it selective amnesia, but it's rather entertaining. And for the first time, I didn't argue. I didn't try to reframe or reclaim. I simply sat with the knowledge that she was correct, and in that acceptance, I felt a weight lift. I was no longer responsible for defending an unsustainable narrative. So, the next time you hear an American confidently claim that we invented everything from democracy to the digital age, remember, it is rarely arrogance in its pure form. It is, more often than not, the product of a specific upbringing, a curated national story. Our textbooks weren't necessarily false. They were merely severely abridged, edited for time and patriotic effect. If unshakable confidence is our national pastime, then Britain's quiet, factual, dry-witted rebuttal is their most enduring and sophisticated sport. They have been playing it for centuries, and they are very, very good at it. But this, ultimately, is the true transformative magic of travel. It isn't just about seeing new cathedrals, tasting new foods, or photographing new landscapes. It is about having your own personal, deeply held blockbuster movie of the world interrupted. It is about someone kindly, firmly handing you the director's cut, complete with all the deleted scenes, the international co-producers, and the complex, messy, collaborative credits that came before your scene began. You don't just discover new places. You are forced to confront your own blind spots, the empty spaces on your own mental map. And sometimes, the most profound and lasting revelation you have abroad isn't what you learn about them, their history, their customs, their quiet pride. It is what you finally, humbly, and clearly understand about yourself, your country, and your place in the long, unbroken, and gloriously shared story of human achievement. If this journey into the heart of cultural perception has resonated with you, sparked a thought, or even just made you smile in recognition, please like this video and follow Winds of Thought for more explorations into how we see the world and how the world sees us.